Chucker, eh?
How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the Sharp Hand Path. I'm your host, Jesse Morgan, and welcome to the first video of 2024. Like I mentioned before, I planned on doing a ranking of the Shawscope Volume 2 right here. I'm glad to have a legit copy of this, finally enough to watch all the films. Straight from Suspect Video. Shout out to you guys for actually having a legit copy of this in your shop at the Fright Mall in Bowmanville. That was an excellent find. So yeah, I finally had the chance to sit down and watch all the films on here and percolate with it for a bit and think about each movie. So yeah, we're gonna start ranking these Shaw Brothers films from 14 to number 1. I'm going to go through each film, some of the actors in it that kind of stand out and are kind of like the main stars. I'm going to go through some pros and cons of each one. But the first one we're going to start off at position 14 is, and you probably already guessed it if you've seen this, Boxer's Omen. So yeah, Boxer's Omen was from 1983. A couple of the actors from this was Philip Ko, which is the main character, as Chan Hung. There's also Wang Lung Wei as Chan Wing, who is the brother that ends up getting paralyzed by Bu Bo, which is played by Bolo Yeung. So that's kind of a plus for this, is that Bolo Yeung is in this for a couple of scenes here and there throughout. And this was directed by Kwei Chi Hung. Apologies for any of mispronunciations of the names in this. First up, I'm going to talk about the positives about this film. There's some boxing scenes in this, obviously, because it's called The Boxer's Omen. The scenes where the boxing happens are pretty good. Again, happens with Bolo Yeung, and early on he ends up paralyzing Chan Wing. So yeah, those are two positives, Bolo Yeung and the boxing scenes. And if you're a fan of what the Giallo community call as sleaze, there is a little bit of nude or sex scenes with the actress Carmen Wei, who is Chan's girlfriend in this film. But let's get on to the main reason why this is at number 14, and that is the cons for this film. First of all, it has to be stated, the effects in this are really, really bad. There is a scene where this voodoo guy is commanding some spiders to crawl across the floor and drink some sort of venom or goo, and it's clearly spiders that you could buy at the dollar store, and in order for it to look like the spiders to drink the goo, I guarantee you they filled it with goo and squeezed it out, but then reversed the film in order to make it look like the spiders are drinking the goo off the ground. And there is also some really weird creepy bat creature things that are in this, but also look like you could have bought from the dollar store, and they threw on like ravioli and spaghetti to look like guts. The special effects in this were not so special, let's just say that. Moving on to another con I found about this, the plot was just overly convoluted. What could have been a simple revenge story where the brother gets revenge for the boxer killing his brother in it, training for a little bit and beating him back. That could have been a fine story on its own, but then they had to add all these weird voodoo backstory plots and side characters and whatnot to it. They had to add in quite a few like gross scenes where the voodoo guys are eating guts and fish eggs and turkey genitalia or chicken genitalia. They eat it and then they spit it out and then they hand it to another person, and that person eats the stuff that the person just it's really gross. Another thing about this film that puts it at this ranking is there's no kung fu. There is absolutely no kung fu in this film at all. Sure, there's some boxing, but boxing isn't kung fu. And lastly, that makes it so low on the list is there's zero star power except for Bolo Yeung, and he's in this for a maximum of maybe 5-10 minutes the entire movie. So yeah, Boxer's Omen from 1983, definitely 14 on the list. Moving on to number 13, that is on the same disc, Mercenaries from Hong Kong. Now, Mercenaries from Hong Kong was made in 1982. some actors on this are a little bit better. You got like T Long in it, you've got Lo Lei in it, and you also have appearances from Lung Wei, Wang Yu, who I believed played Dirty Ho, and you also have Philip Ko, Candice Yu, who plays Ying He, and it was directed by Wang Jing, who, it doesn't sound familiar at all. Neither does the director from Boxer's Omen. I don't know how many Shaw Brothers films those two made, but probably wasn't too many. Let me know in the comment section if I'm wrong, though. Anyways, let's talk about some of the pros before I get into the cons. There's some minor fight scenes here and there. Lo Lei and T Lung are in this, so it does add a little bit of star power. And again, there's some sleaze in it. There's like a nude/sex scene while they're over in a foreign country fighting for it and trying to do whatever it is in this film they're trying to do, which leads into the cons. The plot is kind of messy and fairly forgettable as well. I completely forgot what was happening in this movie as soon as it was over, and again, lacked a lot of kung fu. There was a couple of fight scenes here and there, but it was more like an army style combat, and it wasn't any sort of like mantis or eagle claw or anything like that. It was mostly just military style fighting. It's a very guns/war heavy film. It's also kind of more modern and contemporary time period than it is a old period piece, which I tend to prefer. The hairstyles I like better in the old stuff. The newer ones where they're all looking like they're from like the Beatles isn't my thing, or the big fluffy 80s hair, not really my thing. Yeah, that's kind of what all puts Mercenaries from Hong Kong at 13. All right, let's move on to rank 12, and that is The Barefooted Kid, which is from 1993. It's probably one of the last Shaw Brothers films they put out before they shut down or whatever happened to them. I watched a documentary or two about Shaw Brothers Studios, and I knew then what happened to them, but I've kind of forgotten over the last few months or so. So the director of this one is Johnny To. I wonder if he's any relation to the actor that plays one of the more recent Ip Man. I might put a picture of him here or here. Probably not, because a lot of Chinese actors choose names that will sound more relatable to North American viewers, so they're probably not related at all. Anyways, the actors though that pop up in this are Aaron Kwok. He's the main titular character of the Barefooted Kid, and then we also have T Lung. I know a lot of you guys like T Lung, and I know there's a big box set from Shout Factory that's out there. Definitely is on my radar. Eventually we'll be picking that up too. And then we also have Maggie Chung and Jackie Wu, a couple of the female stars in The Barefooted Kid. The pros about this film are some good fight scenes. I do enjoy some of the fights that happen in this, and there is kung fu in this film, so that's a plus at least. There is some odd funny parts here and there, namely the main character being illiterate and the main female actress in this getting him to accidentally pronounce his name wrong, and he ends up calling himself a bastard, I believe was the name, or son of a bitch. Which is pretty funny, and the kids laugh at it. And the general character arc for the Barefooted Kid is pretty good. If you do enjoy this film, that'll probably be one of the things you enjoy, is his like beginning kind of a nomad, homeless, illiterate guy ends up getting educated and overcoming his troubles, etc., etc., and finding a family. That is, I guess, an endearing part of the film. But let's move on to the cons and why it's at number 12. Honestly, I feel like it's probably a mostly forgettable remake of an earlier film. I know that Shaw Brothers had a similar plot to this, and this was just kind of like a more modern remake of it and a more updated vision, but I'm more likely to enjoy the original one, if anything, because this one seemed to lack that early Shaw Brothers feel here and there. Also, as someone who hates feet, I think they're gross and smelly, no matter whose feet it is. It's just, I don't like feet. I have a feet phobia, I guess. They focused way too much on feet on this. It was really gross. His feet get dirty a lot. It focuses in on his dirty feet, and they talk about feet and zoom in on them. It just, yuck. Okay, yuck. Feet are no-go for me. Gross. Also, besides T. Lung, there wasn't really much of star power in this. There's no Venoms, there's no Lo Lei, there is no dude from the King Boxer. There's nothing like that in this, again, just except for T. Lung, so didn't really have anyone for me to be excited for that's in it. And it just kind of seemed like a run-of-the-mill average plot for Shaw Brothers film. There's nothing super duper unique about this one besides the character is illiterate and was good with his feet. I don't know. It didn't really stand out in my mind of all the other really cool nuanced plots that are in some of the earlier Shaw Brothers films. And even though I did like some of the fight scenes that were in this, I found that they were kind of average in comparison, again, to older Shaw Brothers films. So that's what puts the 1993 Barefooted Kid at number 12. All right, moving along to rank number 11. And again, funnily enough, on the same disc is Jet Li's Martial Arts of Shaolin. So, obviously, the star power in this is there. It's got Jet Li. The director of this is Lau Kar Lung. So, you got a nice first and only time matchup of Jet Li and Lau Kar Lung. Also in this, though, is Cheng He Yu. And you might remember Cheng He Yu if you've seen the Legend of Bruce Lee series. He plays the Ip Man of that series, so that's kind of cool that he's in there. This also has Hu Zhanshuang and Shuayan Huang, who plays the female character that's in this is Sima Yan, who's also apparently Jet Li's ex-wife, because he was married to her, I believe, for 20 years or so. She's a very attractive actress, so I could see why he married her, but also she might know actual Kung Fu too, so that'd be cool to know. I didn't read that far into it when I was doing research for these, but yeah, interesting to know that Shui Yan Huang was Jet Li's ex-wife for a while. So the pros of Martial Arts of Shaolin from 1986 is that, again, has Jet Li in it, so if you're a huge Jet Li fan, there you go. And the training scenes were good in this. It's taken place in Shaolin, of course, so there's gonna be some Shaolin training. There's some specific Kung Fu style training. There's bow staff training, etc. So that's some pros in this. The main ending fight is really, really good and kind of makes the top lists of people in the martial arts cinema circle for the best end fights too. It's the one where it's the main bad guy on a boat and a bunch of wood is in the water, and Jet Li and his friends are fighting all the general's soldiers and bodyguards and stuff, and they all fall in the water, and it's crazy, and there's like a big brawl here and there in different parts of the boat and on the water. So that's kind of cool. And then the ending fight itself between Jet Li, I believe one of his Shifus, versus the general, and the ending is pretty crazy what happens to the general. I'm not gonna spoil that part because you should probably see that, but yeah, Jet Li uses this weird, like, I don't know, crazy monkey looking fighting style to fight off the bad guy at the end. Lastly, it's Jet Li's only Shaw Brothers film, so if you want to see Jet Li in a Shaw Bros film, this is the one to do it. But let's get into the cons and why this is at number 11. So it's fairly boring for 75% of the movie, I'd say, up until they get closer to the final battle on the boat. It's not really all that interesting. There's a couple of interesting plot points here and there, like Jet Li has this bracelet on his ankle that has bells on it, and then you find out Shuyan Hong's character, or Sima Yan's character, has bells on her ankles, and they're supposed to be promised to each other because of their parents or some reason. That doesn't really resolve at the end, and I don't really like that. But yeah, definitely one of Jet Li's least interesting roles or films in his filmography. And there's some humor in this, but I found it pretty cringy. Them trying to pass off Jet Li as a woman in it, and the things that he does, it doesn't age well, at least not for my centrist views and stuff like that. Maybe to you, if you're right wing or whatever, you might find it funny and find the mockery of women or trans people or whatever funny in it. But to me, it just comes across as cringy and aged poorly. And again, the character you want to get the girl in this movie just doesn't. Spoiler alert. It sucks because you're like, yeah, you're rooting for them to get the girl, and Nothing. It doesn't happen. They even choose to not get the girl at the end, pretty much. It's like, why? Why? It's all this set up to you getting them, and all these things that happen that make you think as a audience member that that's going to happen, and then nope. It's like, okay, why set that up if you're not going to pay it off? But all right. And even though this was filmed in Shaolin, the Shaolin scenes weren't all that great or utilized the best. I've seen way better Shaolin training scenes and filming parts better in other films in the Shaw Brothers library. So yeah, that's kind of why Martial Arts of Shaolin isn't as high on this, and it's down at 11 out of 14. Okay, let's move on to number 10, and that is Mad Monkey Kung Fu from 1979. So this is one of the earlier films that is in the Shaw Brothers Volume 2 set. So let's talk about the director. The director is Lau Kar-Leung. He's also the main actor in this, the main like Shifu master character. He ends up teaching Xiao Ho, the monkey guy, monkey kung fu, after he kind of gets crippled and brutalized in this film and made pretty much homeless. Lo Lei is in it, great kung fu Shaw Brothers actor, but he's the main kind of like antagonist and bad guy in this. He does some pretty scummy shit. He's the one that ends up getting Lau Kar-Leung's character brutalized and unable to do his kung fu for the most part. And then the lovely Cara Wei is in this, one of the most enchanting actresses from the Shaw Brothers era. So that's nice that she's in this, which is also a part of the pros and cons in this. The pro obviously being that Lo Lei and Lau Kar-Leung is in this along with Cara Wei. So it's got some star power, it's got some eye candy, and the character arc in this is probably one of the coolest character arcs for both characters, Lau Kar-Leung and Xiao Ho's character. And the plot is fairly unique. You don't really see this type of like revenge plot and victim gets justice for their wrongdoings type of plot. It happens a lot in the Shaw Brothers films where revenge plots happen and things like that. But this is fairly unique and a little bit more brutal than most, at least that I've seen so far. And the fight scenes in this are pretty incredible. So with that all said, you'd probably think Mad Monkey Kung Fu would be higher for me than 10 out of 14. But the things that bring this down for me, there's an animal cruelty / death scene in this that really rubs me the wrong way. I almost turned it off at that point, and it really hit me in the feels and pissed me off. I don't know if they actually hurt a real monkey in this movie or not. Hopefully it was just a prop, but it was brutal, it was unnecessary, and I would be super pissed, and I would react a little bit more harsher than Lau Kar-Leung reacts in this, the character at least. I'm surprised he dealt with it so well. But yeah, that was a huge I don't like this film because they did that in it. And then on top of it, I like martial arts, obviously, hence this channel, but monkey style kung fu, at least the way they portrayed in this, isn't really my favorite. Humans acting like monkeys and doing monkey stuff is really cringe for me, and that's where the silliness comes in. There's too much silliness. Xiao Ho acting like a monkey, calling himself monkey, I don't know, it's a little too cringe and a little too degrading for the character and kind of unrealistic. I don't feel like maybe in that time period someone might act like that, but I don't know. It's very hard for me to take seriously or enjoy. And the last kind of con on here and why Mad Monkey Kung Fu is so low on the list is because the bad guys are either super duper overpowered and unbeatable and ridiculous, like the Lo Lei character, or they're an absolute joke, and it's like, well, why would you even let them have a chance to kill the monkey and be cruel and whatever if they're so laughably beatable? So it's like, okay, either the bad guys are overpowered or they're a joke. There's no middle ground and no believable difficulty for the main characters to beat or not beat the bad guys. It's so incredibly high, like Lo Lei's character, or so ridiculous, like the lackeys. It's just, yeah, there's that. That's basically the reason why Mad Monkey Kung Fu is so low for me. If it wasn't for the monkey style, even though I realize that's the whole point of the movie, and the cruelty at the beginning, and the kind of the cringy acting for the Xiao Ho character, this would probably be higher, because again, the arc is great. Lo Lei and Lau Kar-Long working together, or like antithesis of each other, was good. And the character arc from what happens to the redeemable end, it was really good too. So unfortunately, a few things had to bring it down, and that's why Mad Monkey Kung Fu from 1979 is at number 10. Moving along to the 9th rank on this list is Disciples of the 36th Chamber of Shaolin, and that was from 1985. Now, the reason why this is so low is because of the pretty much build-up of the first film. The first 36 Chamber is so good that seeing Disciples of the 36 Chamber really didn't do much for me. But before we get on to all that, let's talk about the director. Lau Kar-Long is in this again as the director, and he also acts in it. Also beefing up the star power is Gordon Liu. Xiao Ho is in this again, the guy who's the monkey from the previous film. Lily Li and Sun Chen, aka Scorpion from Five Deadly Venoms. Apologies for the spoiler, but that's how everyone remembers Sun Chen. So yeah, Venom Mob characters in this. Sun Chen, that's good. Really enjoy that he's in this a bit. Let's talk about the pros quickly before we move on to why this is so low. Gordon Liu is Monk Santee in this again, so that's nice that he reprises his role from the first film and isn't some random peddler who's tricking people instead of Santee for whatever reason in the second one. But yeah, so he's Santee again, which is nice. There's some really good fight scenes in this, as you'd expect from a 36 Chambers film, and it's a 36 Chambers film, so it at least has some of that going for it. It has a little bit of nostalgia from the first two films, but I will say it's a little too goofy. Some of the characters are a little unbelievable. Their actions are kind of out of left field. There's a lot less focus on training in this one, like the Shaolin training and stuff like that, which is really what makes the first two great. So it's unfortunate, and the training they do have is kind of meh. Again, weird plot choices in this film, like the teens being chained up at school. Is that an actual thing back in the day for China, for teenagers in school to be chained up to each other or to their desks? Because that seems a little above and beyond what should be allowed for teachers to do, even if their kids are a little bit unruly. I know back in the day teachers would whack the kids with a ruler or something, which is still, seems ridiculous to ever have been allowed, but chained up? Like, it's not a prison, it's a school. You're supposed to be learning. So that's weird. Xiao Ho's character is also inexplicably endowed with great kung fu skills. You never know why or who taught him these skills. He just kind of shows up and knows how to whoop all the ass, and is almost even as good as Monk Santee, which, fuck off. You're not as good as Monk Santee. I'm sorry. That is not possible. He's older than you. He's trained longer than you. There's no way in hell your skills could possibly match Monk Santee and Gordon Liu's. So, no, I'm not accepting that. I don't know how they expect the audience to think that he's anywhere close to Santee's skills. Speaking of Santee, the focus is taken a lot away from Gordon Liu's Santee. If you're going to have a 36 Chambers film and Santee's back in it as Gordon Liu is back as Santee, then that should be one of your main focuses. His struggles, how he's teaching the students, some of the flack he's getting maybe from the general or the ruler of China at the time. Maybe focus on him helping his students with some of their problems. And I don't mean Xiao Hao. I mean like his actual students that want to be there and learn and not make a mockery of the 36th Chamber. Yeah, weird decisions made for this, silliness thrown in, and really inexplicable things that just don't make sense thrown in. So that's why Disciple of the 36th Chamber from 1985 is rank number 9 for me. Let me know where you would rank Disciple of the 36th Chamber for your ranking. Now let's finish up the bottom half of the Shawscope Volume 2 with rank number 8, and that is the second half of the Mad Monkey Kung Fu disc, which is 5 Super Fighters, also known as Monkey Kung Fu according to Wikipedia at some point. Not sure why they changed the name of it, but yeah, so they stuck to Monkey Kung Fu style related films back to back, but this one definitely doesn't focus on it the way Mad Monkey Kung Fu did. 5 Super Fighters from 1978 does a little bit more tactfully, and I enjoy the story a little bit more, and there's no animal cruelty. So there's that. So the director of 5 Super Fighters is Lo Ma, also known as John Law, because John Law sounds more American and is more relatable to North America. I'm just going to refer to him as Lo Ma because I respect the Chinese names. So that's the director of this one. The actors in this are Hao Chi Sing, Tony Leung, Austin Wei, and Wu Yan Chun. So obviously not too much star power in this and not too many familiar faces, but let's talk about the pros first. The pros of this are the training sequences and scenes are pretty good. They're not the best training scenes, but some of them are actually pretty interesting, and some of the things that they learn while they're away being trained by their kind of secular secondary masters to help get revenge for what's gone on is pretty good. So yeah, the training scenes are fairly good, not as good as some other Shaw Bros, but they're enjoyable nonetheless. And the fight scenes in this are obviously good. If you're going to train up really nicely, you're also going to fight really nicely. So I feel like the two kind of go hand in hand. And the ending of the film, the revenge plot and how it's resolved, is satisfying. So that's a good positive for this. All that being said, the cons about this are, again, there's kind of 0 star power. There's no Venom Mob. There's no Lo Lei. There's no T Lung. Lau Kar Lung's not in this. There's no really familiar faces. So you're just kind of going in here with 0 kind of expectations. It doesn't really fulfill that excitement or anticipation level where it otherwise would. There's also this kind of lack of villain backstory. The film opens up with this really good kung fu artist, and he calls himself the filter of bad kung fu. He goes around and he destroys other people who haven't trained long enough or hard enough, and if they're not good, they're not allowed to practice their kung fu anymore or teach their kung fu anymore, and he's like the person that's now going to run that village's kung fu or whatever. And he goes in, he kicks a bunch of people's asses, he beats up this old man, and he's kind of a jackass, but there's no real explanation to why he's there besides to test other people's kung fu and ruin their lives, pretty much. And there's no real explanation as to where he came from, what motivated him to start weeding out bad kung fu or poor students and stuff like that. He's just kind of an asshole that shows up, fucks things up, and goes, what now? He doesn't really have a reason for being there other than plot. Speaking of which, the plot is too simple. They just decided, I'm going to have a guy come in here, fuck shit up, beat everyone up, and have the characters get revenge for their master being beat up and humiliated. And that's it. That is literally the plot. Their master gets beat up and they have to seek justice for him and being humiliated so he doesn't feel bad about his life. I feel like that kind of lacks depth. I feel like if you had to explain the bad guy's motive and reason for being there, and a little bit of his backstory, and maybe a little bit of the character's backstory, that he comes and ruins their lives before he comes theirs, like journey before, like have the master training his students and their struggles and why they're learning kung fu and how what they're doing is noble and good, and you want to root for them, so that the guy that comes in and fudges things up for them is an even bigger jerk, and you like hate why he's doing it, but you also know why he's there to do it. That would have been nice for the story, but none of that happens. There's no explanation as to who he is or why he's there besides what he says he's there for. There's no explanation as to why you should care about this master or his students, because you don't spend any time with them prior to this happening. So yeah, I don't know. The lack of depth of plot really bugs me, and that's why it's in the lower half of the ranking here at number 8. So yeah, 5 Super Fighters is Ranked 8, how would you rank it? Let me know in the comment section. Let's get on to the top half of the Shawscope Volume 2. Alright, starting up the top half at the 7th position is My Young Auntie from 1981. It's got its own solo disc here in Shawscope Volume 2. Was fairly hyped and excited to see this because I figured maybe it's going to be a little bit like the strong one-woman army type of character, badass type that Come Drink With Me and Golden Swallow boast themselves to be. So I'm like, oh yeah, cool. This will be kind of my first taste into that type of Shaw Brothers film, and maybe I'll have a bigger appreciation for Come Drink With Me and Golden Swallow when I finally get to see them. So yeah, I'm like, sweet. This will be my first taste of that type of movie. So this had a lot of hype going into it, but let's talk about the director first. Again, Lau Kar-long directs this one. He's an actor in this too. He's the uncle, which is kind of funny considering how young Kara Wei is. Again, she's in this one as one of the actors, as well as Gordon Liu, who plays the main character's friend. Xiao Ho. There's also Wang Long-wei, of course, because he's got to be in every single one of these Shaw Brothers films. And speaking of being in every one of these Shaw Brothers films, Xiao Ho has been in quite a lot of what we just talked about, so it seems to be a big Gordon Liu Xiao Ho featured volume. Very neat that they chose to do that. So yeah, it's got a little bit of star power in there with Lau Kar-long, Gordon Liu, Kara Wei, and now Xiao Ho being a bigger thing in this, and of course Johnny Wang, or Wang Long-wei, however you want to refer to him. So the pros, obviously being Kara Wei's in it, beautiful, awesome actress, excellent fight scenes too. Every fight scene that she's in and fighting, she's fantastic, very flowy and beautiful forms, excellent blocks and punches and kicks and all the things you would expect in kung fu. Really good fight scenes. She's definitely that powerful female lead badass, unique trope for Shaw Brothers films, and of course the humorous fish out of water elements that this film sprinkles in here and there, which is weird. I don't know why she wouldn't know how to act or dress in this town or city or whatever. It must be their own weird customs or way of doing things that she's not used to. Maybe it's a more contemporary town and she's not used to how people dress or what is thought of different styles. But she does get into a couple of situations where she doesn't understand why people are looking at her funny, and she's acting and doing things that are the old way, and people are kind of not responding to it in a good way or a socially acceptable way, and she has to adapt to it and get a new hairstyle and a new way of dressing, and then that kind of lends her to different commentary from society and her nephew's reaction and friends. So yeah, it's a neat little fish out of water story. The only cons that I could say about this is that Xiao Hao's musical scenes are so unnecessary and weird and cringy. It didn't need to be in this. And Xiao Ho's bratty nephew character is also kind of cringe, and he's being unnecessarily combative with the aunt because either she's a girl or because she's too young to be his aunt, or whatever the reason is. He's trying to fight her and rebel against her wishes and not take her seriously as an aunt or family member that he should respect. So it's really weird that he just chooses to be that disrespectful. Speaking of contemporary, the film is also slightly too contemporary of a period for me. I like the old time period pieces of Shaw Brothers films with the different haircuts. Again, with the poofy hair and the Beatles haircuts, it's really weird and distracting. It's not contemporary enough. It's like in that weird middle period where it's like nobody has hair like that, and it's not a good style. The old like ponytails and long hair was a lot more aesthetically pleasing to me, and I enjoy that more. So that was also not a thing that I enjoyed. The uncle kind of had that Beggar Sue look to him. How many Beggar Sue characters are out there? I think Lau Kar-long has been a Beggar Sue character in a few of these films. Maybe that's just a play type that he enjoys doing, but I feel like he didn't need to have that look for this. But otherwise, it was a fairly good film, and I did enjoy My Young Auntie, and it's at number 7, not because I don't like it, but because I do like it, and I thought it mostly lived up to the hype that I was thrusting upon it from the research I did and the plot synopsis, etc. All right, moving on to number 6. Number 6 is Return to the 36 Chamber from 1980. This one is obviously better in my opinion than Disciples of the 36th Chamber, but let's talk about the director and the actors first. Director is Lau Kar Lung, and the actors in this are Gordon Liu, Xiao Ho again, Johnny Wang Lung Wei, Kara Wei, woohoo, Li King Chu as Monk San Ti. So that's weird. In this one they decided that Gordon Liu wasn't going to be Monk San Ti in this, and instead he was going to be some traveling peddler scam artist that would pretend to be a monk and get people to give him money and pretend to fight off evil and help people for his own gain. And that is not what a monk does. So yeah, kind of dropping Gordon Liu's character down a peg after building him up so high from the first film is kind of a weird, like, whiplash story plotline for me. I didn't really take well to it. But let's talk about the pros about this first. Awesome training sequences, of course, as you'd expect from a 36 Chambers film. Some of the best in this box set basically was from this, when he's learning how to fight, but also tie bamboo rafters and help fix up Shaolin in order to gain access to it and be allowed to learn Kung Fu. And of course, again, with awesome training sequences, you're going to have awesome fight sequences. I find, again, they go hand in hand with these films. The ending fight was really good. A nice use of the Shaolin setting, and the chambers happen again in this film. So for the most part, this is really, really good and an excellent addition to the 36 Chambers series. But let's get on to the cons. Gordon Liu doesn't reprise his role as Monk San Ti. It was given to Li King Chu for some reason. Not a fan of his character being this con artist. And there was generally a little bit way too much goofiness. And I feel like I remember seeing one of those characters that had like the extra buck teeth, dental, like inserted gum things that they have here that makes fun of Chinese people. Which, why as a Chinese person would you make fun of Chinese people with that weird stereotypical buck teeth, like, ho thing? Like, ugh, it's kind of cringe, and I don't know why you would do it. So that's in here, and that definitely pushed it over the top for too much jokiness. Yeah, 36 Chambers Part 2, Return to the 36 Chamber, could have been higher on this list if it wasn't for the whiplash decision to turn Gordon Liu into a random con artist at the beginning of it, and the weird kind of stereotype Chinese bucktooth thing they decided to throw in here. They should have definitely just continued on Gordon Liu as Monk San Ti and his struggles and what he's going through after creating the 36 Chambers, etc. But they did what they did with this. They tried to do, I guess, like a retelling of the story of a character that was outside of the 36 Chambers and worked their way inside as an outsider again. So yeah, interesting decision for part 2, but this is why it's at number 6 and not like number 2 or 3. All right, moving on to number 5 out of 14 for the Shaw Bros set. That is 10 Tigers from Quang Tong from 1980. There we go. I'm not gonna lie, the hype and the expectation for 10 Tigers from Quang Tong was super duper high. It's talked about quite a bit on a bunch of people's lists. It even has a name drop in Forbidden Kingdom by Michael Angarino's character. So yeah, me just itching at the bit to see what all the hype was about for the 10 Tigers was probably unrealistically high. But let's get into the director and the actors first. This one was directed by Chang Che, and the actors in this were above and beyond. This was like Wu-Tang Clan meets NWA meets the G-Unit Squad, all rammed together, like all of the players that you could possibly want, all working together. So it's T. Lung, Alexander Fu Shang, Chang Shang, Lo Meng, Philip Kwok, Lu Fang, Sun Chen, Pai Wei, which a rare one to see, and of course Wang Lung Wei made their way into this. There's just a fistful and a half of all the star power. So obviously one of the pros of this is that it's a star-studded cast and a half, and the fight scenes that happen in this is excellent. Every fight scene that goes down, it goes above and beyond. It's just fantastic. And there's even a fight scene where someone pulls out a golden statue as a sword, the Wu-Tang style sword. So it's very, very interesting. And of course, for me, there is a long-awaited fight scene in this. There's a couple of cool verses from the Venom mobs, but I kind of wanted to see Alexander Fu Shang and Chang Shang fight each other. They're both very goofy, silly type of kung fu artists in half the movies that they're in. I think maybe once or twice they get a serious role in all of the Shaw Brothers films, but for the most part, they're a goofy kind of comedic role and not really taken all that seriously. So seeing them head to head for like a couple of seconds in the fight near the end was neat. So yeah, if you ever want to see Fu Shang and Chang Shang have a quick little matchup against each other, it's in this. I was very satisfied that that actually happened. It didn't go on for too long, but it was nice to see that that little snippet did happen of the two comedic dorks fighting each other. Let's go on about the cons though. The plot line is slightly convoluted, that's for sure. I kind of missed why things were happening in there, who was fighting who, why they wanted to fight who all was against each other and for each other. A bunch of random people started accusing each other of certain things that never actually happened. And you're like, wait, did I miss that part from earlier? Was this explained why they're being accused of this? It kind of gets jumbled in there. If you're not super duper paying attention, it's probably one of those things you got to watch a couple of times. But yeah, very convoluted plot. And the end fight, although it is neat and epic and kind of unique, it's not as epic as it could possibly be considering this huge laundry list of star-studded cast that's in this film. The whole Venom mob and the other side supporting characters like T. Long and Alexander Fu Shang and Wang Longwei. You'd think them fighting the entire Venom mob would happen and have a back and forth at the end, have this big, like, epic fight between all them. Nope. It literally boils down to two people fighting it out at the very end, and it's none of the Venom mob from what I can remember. So really weird choice to do that for the final fight. And unfortunately, it doesn't really live up to the hype of what 10 Tigers from Quang Tong really could be or accomplish. So unfortunately, it does sit at number 5 instead of number 2 or 1 for me. Let's move on to the 4th ranking in the Shaw Brothers box set volume 2. And number 4 is Invincible Shaolin from 1978. There we go there. So yeah, Invincible Shaolin was directed by Chang Che, and it has Chang Shang, Lo Mang, has Sun Shen in it. It has Lu Fang, and it has Philip Kwok. Philip Kwok being, of course, one of my favorite of the Venom mob. Pai Wei, again, surprised at the snakes in this. And Wang Longwei and Kara Wei. So, a lot of good Wei actors in this. I don't know if you're supposed to pronounce W-E-I the same as W-A-I. Correct me in the comments and let me know. But yeah, I'm going to say Pai Wei and Kara Wei the same way. Wow. Anyways, so those are the actors that are in this. It's got quite a good lineup. So yeah, the pros in this being most of the Venom mobs in this, if not all. Some really great fight scenes, obviously, of people fighting back and forth with their styles. And it has an interesting plot. Now, the plot is also a part of the cons too, because I feel like it's a little bit too simple, and I feel like the director or writer of this threw this together in order to get the Venom mob together in a movie again to build off the hype of probably one of the earlier films, maybe 5 Deadly Venoms. I can't remember if 5 Deadly Venoms came out before Invincible Shaolin or not, but if it did, this is definitely a reason why Invincible Shaolin happened and why they threw those characters in again to fight each other and whatnot. The characters' choices in this seem kind of poor as well. You would think that they would catch on to what's happening to the non-twist twist that happens in this. You kind of see it a mile away even before Wang Longwei's character explains it to the other like lackeys that are in this. But yeah, I feel like twist is not really a twist, and I feel like the characters that are in this should have caught on to what's happening and why they're being made to fight each other before this actually happens. And there's a couple of characters that kill another character that seem like normally they wouldn't kill other characters, and they're kind of pushed to do it, and they accept killing the person that they're fighting where they normally wouldn't do it. They'd back off and be like, yo, no, it doesn't have to go this far. We didn't have to kill each other. It was just supposed to be a friendly competition, but they killed them anyways. It's like, okay, but would they really kill the other person? It's not really 100% believable. And then, again, there's no really backstory to a lot of the characters coming to the general and fighting for him. He does explain that he's trying to recruit the best for his army and trying to get the best teachers or whatever, but it's a pretty shallow explanation as to why everyone's being recruited there. I would also have liked to see the backstory to a couple of these people before they got recruited by the general to be there and help. So it's a little bit lacking in the plot, and some of the decisions are a little bit unbelievable. It's a little bit higher than 10 Tigers from Quang Tong, but either one of these could have flipped spots. It could have been a 5 or a 4. Depending on my next watch of these two films, it could probably flip back and forth. I just found for the slightly trimmed down cast of this, you get a lot more versus battles that you would want. You do want, when you see these characters from the Venom mob, you do want to see them fighting each other because you're rooting for one or the other for one reason or not. And this does a little bit better job of the versus matches than 10 Tigers, in my opinion. So that's why Invincible Shaolin from 1978 is number 4. All right, we are in the last 3 of the top half of this ranking. Maybe you can suss out what the number 1 is already. If you think you know what my number 1 is at this point, comment down in the comment section. I know. So that's your mission if you've got this far in the video. Let me know what you think my number 1 is now that we're at the top 3. So, number 3 is 1979's Kid with the Golden Arm. I know a lot of people really enjoyed this, and it's the top of their lists when it comes to Shaw Brothers films. Kid with the Golden Arm definitely has a lot of things going for it, and it's the reason why it is number 3 on this list, because it's so good. Now, it is directed by Chang Che again. It has the actors Lo Mang, Sun Chen, Philip Kwok, Lu Fang, Chang Shang, Pai Wei, cool, Pai Wei again, Helen Poon, and Wang Lung Wei. So it's got a lot of the Venom mob in it. Lo Mang is the main character in here, the guy with the golden arm that can snap your sword and not get stabbed or cut for whatever reason. It's never really explained why he's got that superpower, but we'll get on to that. So the pros in this is obviously a great cast, star-studded, lots of Venom mob characters in this. And of course, excellent fight scenes, because the Venom mob just knows how to put out when it comes to fight and choreography and nailing it. In this one, the characters are very interesting in this. Everyone has their own code name and their special weapon specialty. Everyone has unique abilities and kind of like a superhero type of roster and character traits for Kid with the Golden Arm. There's a guy that's really good at spears, another dude that's really good with swords and daggers, another that has an iron wardrobe that can't be stabbed or defeated that way, even though he fights people with a fan. I'm going to have a long lecture about how people are afraid of fans in Kung Fu movies. Like, if a guy pulls out a fan, I'm not going to take you seriously if you're trying to wave it at me. I'm like, why? Why am I trying to fight so hard against a dude with a fan? Anyways, there's a neat twist at the end you're not really expecting, and it was kind of cool. There's a really good ending fight where someone ends up losing one of their senses and has to rely on another sense to really figure out who or when someone's attacking them. Really enjoyed that. And again, a lot of cool names and weapons and powers that are in this group of characters in this film. The only flaws I can think about, or the cons, is I'm not really a fan of Philip Kwok as a drunk. Drunkard Philip Kwok, it kind of does him a disservice in my opinion, because I've mentioned it before, but being a drunk or being on drugs or being high mixed with being someone who practices the arts really contrasts itself to me. I feel like the arts and practicing martial arts is honorable and classy and something to be respected, whereas someone who's high or on drugs or being a drunkard is low class and not something to be respected. So mixing the two is really conflicting for me, especially with a character like Philip Kwok, or an actor like Philip Kwok, who I kind of admire, and I really dig his chops and acting abilities, etc. And he just has a physical aesthetic that I enjoy, mostly because he looks like my Shifu spinner. But other than that, I really enjoy his character, and so when they sully him, in my opinion, with being a drunkard, it's kind of off-putting for me. So there's that. And then with a movie surrounding the title Kid with the Golden Arm, even though he's definitely not a kid, he's of age, okay? Lo Mang's character doesn't appear a lot in the film. He appears a bit at the beginning, and then maybe a scene or two in the middle, and then obviously at the end where there's the big battle and ending fight. But yeah, so for a movie called Kid with the Golden Arm, the Kid with the Golden Arm only does a couple of guest appearances here and there. Very interesting choice. The plot is a bit messy. I did find it hard to follow who was who and doing whatever they're doing for whatever reason, who was working for who, what the major point of going here and doing this was. There's some sort of trade way happening and caravan going on with moving weapons or food or something around, and someone was trying to steal the food or weapons, and someone didn't want it to happen, but other people did want it to happen, and other people had things stolen before they could steal it. And if that sounds a little mixed up and confusing, that's why I'm sitting here going, plot was confusing. Also, again, some of the powers were not explained. Like, why does Lo Mang's character have the ability to be able to be slashed and stabbed with a sword and not bleed? How does he have such Kevlar-like skin, and where did he learn this, and what style is that? I don't think that's explained at all. That happens for a couple of characters where things are happening to them that they're able to negate for whatever reason, and you're like, but how? Why? So that's a couple of the only things I could think about for the cons, but Kid with the Golden Arm is good. I'm going to have to rewatch it again. Love the cast. Love the idea of all the character powers and names. Definitely something that is going to be a frequent watch when it comes to Shaw Brothers films for me, and that's why Kid with the Golden Arm from 1979 is number 3. Moving on to the last two. Are you ready for number 2? Because you're instantly going to know what number 1 is. Number 2 is 1979's Magnificent Ruffians. There we go. This film was one of those things where it's like 5 super fighters or Invincible Shaolin. The idea is good, but it's executed, Although I did like the storyline and I did like the fights a little bit better than Invincible Shaolin. This was definitely the better version of that story. The Venom mob's in this again for the most part, and they do have to fight each other, and there's not a twist, but it's like someone's pulling strings in a similar way that happens in Invincible Shaolin. But before we get on to that, let's talk about the director and the actors. Chang Che also directs Magnificent Ruffians. We have Chang Sheng in this, Lo Mang again, Lu Fang, Sun Chen, Philip Kwok again, awesome, and one of the female leads in this is Annie Liu. So for the pros, we have, again, most of the Venom mob in this. No Snake. They didn't have the Snake in this one. The fight scenes were great, really, really good. Every time they fought each other, it was captivating and interesting and exciting to see who was going to win or what was going to happen, and maybe one of them was going to mess up and get really hurt. Yeah, you were glued to your seat for whenever any of these guys fought. The story was good and definitely a better reason to get all of the Venom mob together and fight each other than Invincible Shaolin. And some of the characters are pretty empathetic. When a certain character dies, you're like, oh man, no. And it was in a really crappy way, and it wasn't really the fault of the character who killed them. And when the person sees that he's killed the person, they're really sad and empathetic about it, and they, you can really feel the pain and the struggle there of accidentally hurting someone that you actually kind of care about and have got to know over the last few probably months in their timeline. So yeah, you can definitely feel a little bit with this character and characters, and you can see why they really react strongly at the end. And yeah, really nice story and plot line there. The only thing about this is sort of the same as Invincible Shaolin. I find the characters are slightly gullible. I feel like they would kind of catch on to what's happening before really bad shit starts happening in this, and there's some weird decisions for sure. I think this is the one where they all get naked and jump in a bath together. I don't know how comfortable you are with your fellow man But would you get naked and jump into a hot tub with them all together? I don't know. You know, you and your homies might be super duper close. That's fine. But yeah, they all decide to get naked at one point and jump to a hot tub together. Sausage party. There's a sausage party in here. So interesting decision. Very weird. I feel like that wouldn't happen. But hey, no judgment. Another seemingly rushed plot to get the Venom mob to fight each other. This might again happen after the Five Deadly Venoms movie happened. If not, interesting that they chose to get all these people together to have a versus type of film. But it's kind of rushed, and that's probably why some of the characters are more gullible than should be and maybe make the weird decisions, because the plot wasn't sat down and written and thought about too super duper strongly or closely. They just want to pump this out, because I think I remember hearing that Shaw Brothers did pump out a movie every month for years at a time, and I guess it was probably a rush job. So that would explain why it feels slightly rushed. But otherwise, really good film. Definitely deserves its spot at number 2 on here. Definitely going to be on rotation when I watch Shaw Brothers stuff. Let's stop yammering and get to the number 1 spot in the Shaw Brothers ranked. Did this seem obvious that it was going to be number 1? Let me know. And what I'm talking about, and it gets its own disc on here, is the 36th Chamber of Shaolin. And I'm glad that I own a copy of this and an HD copy of this. I've been wanting to see it for a bit. I had a chance to see it on Netflix, but did my ass decide to watch it before they took it off? Nope. So yeah, a few years went by before I was able to get a copy through this box set, and I even had to go through a full other box set of this bullshit and have it be a bootleg. So I wasn't even able to watch that right away. I had to find another copy, but I finally got to see the 36th Chamber of Shaolin from 1978, and it was glorious. This was once again directed by Lau Kar-Leung, thank you Lau Kar-Leung, and had Gordon Liu, Lo Lei, Lau Kar-Wing, so I guess a nephew or a brother or something of Lau Kar-Leung. Pretty cool. This also again had Xiao Ho in it, and a small appearance by Jimmy Wang Yu. I know a lot of you like him for some reason. Also had Wang Yu in it, which I believe again is Dirty Ho. So the pros of this are obviously amazing training scenes at the Shaolin Temple. So good. They go through a lot of really cool things that test the monks and get their skills higher, and sort of things that they test that you really wouldn't think is something you'd have to work on as a martial artist, but these are skills that are really helpful during battle. So as well as that, there's also the great character arc of as Gordon Liu becoming Monk Santi, and of course this is the best of the trilogy before it starts slowly going downhill for one reason or another. An overall really good film, classic Shaw Brothers film that I think everyone just needs to see. So the cons of this, yes there are a couple. There's too much time spent on the first couple of chambers in my opinion. There's 35 chambers in here before, spoiler alert, Gordon Liu creates his own at the end. But yeah, there's 35 chambers and you only see maybe a handful of them. I'm going to say 6 or 7 at most. So yeah, I feel like they could have skipped over the first chamber where he's trying to cross the little water bridge on the logs a bit better and quicker. We got the point after a while. It's like, yeah, okay, you can't just run across these things and expect to not fall in the water. You have to do it a certain way or be a little bit more light on your feet or faster or whatever. Get on with it. They definitely skipped a few chambers in this. Not much time in the 36th chamber at the end either. Gordon Liu's Santi character goes through all of the chambers, learns all these things over 6 or 7 years, becomes one of the top monks as well in hierarchy, and gets to choose which chamber he works at and kind of like admins and like directs people and helps train them and figure out that chamber. And he gets there pretty quick, but he ends up also requesting to create his own chamber because he feels the outside world would benefit from learning Kung Fu from the Shaolin Temple. And he's like, what if I create a 36th chamber where I bring in my own students from the outside world and train them in the ways of Shaolin monkery? And they're kind of like, I don't know if I want to do that. You don't really have permission, something, here's a plot hole so you can. And then that's kind of how it ends. You see a little bit of a couple of people in this small little blocked out area of him training them and punching and pole stuff, I think. And then it ends. I really, really wish that they skipped taking so long at the beginning to teach him these things in order to, give him more time in his 36th chamber. or make the sequel actually about the 36th chamber and his struggles with it. So it's not a perfect movie. There are some things I wish kind of sped along and got along to, and some stuff I wish had more time spent on it on the reverse hand. So yeah, really, really good. Could have been slightly better, but honestly, it's a great movie for what we got. And that is it. That is the entire Shaw Bros. Volume 2 collection of Shaw Brothers films. Let me know in the comments section if you agree with any of these rankings, how you would possibly rank them different, and let me know if I've inspired you to maybe go check out a few of these long lost Shaw Brothers films. And are you going to be getting volume 2 of Shawscope? Do you already have it? And are we going to get a third volume? What color should it be? The first one was blue. This one was orangey red. Maybe the next one will be silver or gold? That'd be cool. Maybe a green one, because clearly I like green. Anywho, that's it. Thanks for watching. I've been your host, Jesse Morgan. And until next time, Shay Shay, Na Shin, and One On.
We should run. We should hide. We should kick their butts.